was maybe 12, let me see. Or maybe 11. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm just going on verse 18, chapter 11, Genesis. And Peleg was the father of Reu, and Reu was the father of Serug. Serug was the father of Nachor, and Nachor was the father of Tarak. And Tarak was the father of Abram, Nachor, and Haran. Right there and then, we see the beginning of the good generation under Shem descended. And that's where Abram came from. Now, if we look to see in the map-wise, these men of the Shem descendant was not in Canaan. They were all the way in Iraq as today. The town called Ur is where Abraham, Nachor, and Haran will all live with Tarak, his dad. Okay? So it's amazing to find out, looking at these chapters from chapter 11 through chapter 15, it really tells us, I think, I'm looking at it, I'm leaning to the fact that Tarak might have been a godly man and raising his sons to be godly men. And if they were calling on the name of the Lord, then in that descendant of Shem, that's what they were doing. Because it says here in chapter 12, no, in chapter 11, I'm sorry, that Tarak had this idea like, I should go to Canaan. Now, Canaan was like totally west of them. And I don't know how many miles, but it was just out of the way of some way. How are you going to travel through deserts or through miles on a donkey, maybe on a camel? I don't know, or walk? But it's a good distance. But from Iraq, they decided to travel from Iraq all the way up to Haran, and that's north of Canaan. So I don't know how many miles from there either to get up to Haran. But apparently, Tarak in his mind thinking, I got to go to Canaan. Were they there before? I don't know. It doesn't say in detail. I mean, Tarak was 205 years old, so he had plenty of times to do something instead of staying in his town. But it doesn't say that. I'm not going to say it did happen. I say it could have happened, that he might have been to Canaan. But in his mind at this point, he was saying, we're going to go to Canaan. Okay, so what he had with him was Abram and his wife, Sarai, and his grandson, Lot. Okay, his dad had passed away in Ur, in their hometown. So this was what they had with them. So they traveled up to Haran, and they had all their possessions. And so they got up to Haran, and they thought, let's stay here for a while. So they settled in Haran. And then Tarak, Abram's dad, passed away. Now, you think, okay, you think in the idea like, well, our mission was going to Canaan, and Dad said we should go to Canaan, but now Dad is no longer here. So you might think that maybe Abram might have thought, okay, should I go back to Ur? Because the mission, that was maybe Dad's mission to go to Canaan. You don't know. All we know is that the Lord, in chapter 12, came to Abram and spoke to Abram in a very specific and definite way. He said in chapter 12, the Lord said to Abram, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. Now that's pretty specific. If the idea that Abraham thought, maybe I should go back to my town, my kindred, my father's family. But the Lord came to Abram and specifically said, no. Continue on. Continue on to what was previously planned. Okay? New beginnings, folks. New beginnings. We don't have to go back to the old stuff that we know so well and we feel so comfortable. But if God is in the lead and showing us, hey, there's something I want to show you. There's something more that I want to give to you in your life. And this is what the Lord was showing Abram. So you think of Abram thinking, okay, Abram's faithful. Abram's obedient. Because maybe that's what he grew up. Maybe his parents were like that. Teaching them to fear God. Teaching them to trust him. Teaching the sons to be obedient. So Abram, if he heard God's voice, he didn't buck. He was like, oh, okay. So in this way, God continues, and he says, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curses thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. Oh my goodness. What a plan. Come on, folks. If God came to tell you these things, would you not say, no, I got other things going on. I was thinking I was going to do this and that and, move to California, or I was going to do something else. But God was giving Abram these choices, these options. If Abraham never got out of Canaan, or got out of Ur and realized, whoa, I'm going to Canaan, and all these things that God is promising me, yeah, I'll go to Canaan. Would you not want to be blessed? Would you not want to have a good name for yourself so that people will say, man, that Jay, man, he's got a chip off of his shoulder. He's got something, and I like it. He's so cool. He's so loving. He cares for me, and he's rich, and he's got a good-looking woman. Abraham had these things in his hometown. He had the possession. He had riches. He had a good-looking woman. I found out that I read somewhere that that's what American dream is to have power, is to have riches, and have the best-looking woman or the best-looking spouse. Abraham had that. But it didn't get to his head because he had the Lord in his head before anything else. The Lord blessed Abraham for his faithfulness, his trust in him, and his obedience to him. So Abraham just goes, I can't beat that. Yeah, let's get out of Haran. Let's go to Canaan. There's a mission after all. Yeah, let's do it. If God has promised me these things, I'm for it. I'm in it. And that's what he did. His family and all his possession, his wife, his nephew Lot, the possession he had, the camels, the goats, the sheep, the donkeys, and his men and women servants. And when he was in Haran for a while, they didn't say how long, but they did settle in there, people added to his group. So he had a good size entourage. He had a lot of responsibility on his shoulder. So anyway, he traveled to Canaan, and he got to a spot in Canaan, and the Lord met him. The Lord met him in Canaan. And he had said, okay, I'm going ahead of myself. Alrighty here. I'm sorry. I went ahead of myself. I was having so much fun. I like to go look into verses. Okay. All right. We're still in chapter 12. And the Lord continued, and he said to him when he met up with Abraham in Canaan, he said, unto thy seed will I give this land. And it's in verse 7. And then when Abram heard that, he built an altar to the Lord because the Lord appeared to him. So when you build an altar, you just don't build a bunch of rocks and you just leave it there. An altar is an indication of sacrifice. And that's what Abraham possibly did, sacrifice an animal, a sheep, a goat, whatever it may be. But it was indicating to the Lord, thank you, a thanksgiving, a peace offering. And that's what Abraham did because the Lord appeared to him. So we know so far that Abraham is a holy man, that Abraham is a righteous man. And he cares that much to the Lord. He's really serious, a serious person for God. Okay, so we go on, and I'm not going to go into much about, there was a famine that was in Canaan, and he decided to go to Egypt in chapter 12, but I'm going to say that when he did go into Egypt, he had to deal with Pharaoh, and before he had to go see this king in Egypt, he had to tell his wife, his beautiful wife, that I am your brother. Because if I say that I was your husband, I'm toast, I'll be gone. They're going to kill me and take you. So then they won't have to worry about the husband business. But if you tell them I am your brother, they'll leave me alone because you are my sister. And everything I am going to rely on is on you because you're going to keep me from being killed. And that's exactly what had happened. And I think maybe that was cultural. I mean, back then that was probably the thing to do anyway. To save your skin was to say to your spouse, you are my sister or brother. And that's what had happened. And so the Pharaoh, he gave Abram just tons of stuff. He gave him just animals galore. So he's making them prosper. Well, that didn't last too long because Pharaoh found out that his sister was not his sister, it was his wife. So anyway, he had to get out of there because he was told to leave Egypt. And he went back to the same place that he came when he first came to Canaan. And he went back to Bethel is what the name of the place was. So he stayed there, and he put an altar up there like he had done before, and he called upon on the name of the Lord. Now we come to here. Now chapter 13 was very interesting about how God dealt with Abraham and Lot. Now Abraham noticed that his possession was huge, but then Lot's possession was also big too. And there was confusion, and there was chaos, and there was just not very peaceful situation. There was fighting and quarrel going along with Lot's group and then with Abram's group. So Abram suggests, why don't we separate? Why don't you go down the road, and that way we won't cause a rift in our family. And so, of course, Lot went for it. He goes, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Yeah, I want to keep, you want to keep peace in the family. And that's what that Lot did. So Lot decided, he looked around and he said, wow, that looks like a really nice place. I mean, and that was east of where Canaan was. Oh, yeah, all the beautiful forests and the sceneries, just like the garden of the Lord, just like the beautiful places in Egypt. Yeah, I'm going to go further east. That sounds like a plan. That looks really swell place to live. And that's what Lot did. He went further east, the Jordan Valley, what was named, and he went so further that he went all the way to a place called Sodom and nearby Gomorrah. But he did not know that that was not a very good place to live, because those cities were evil and against the Lord. But I found out that later, after Lot left, God appeared before Abraham and talked to Abraham about what was on his mind and what he was going to do for Abraham. And the only thing I can think about, like you're going back to what I said earlier about the DNA of having these three nodes of Shem, Japheth, and Ham. If we all belong into a DNA family, our bloodline, and in the case with Abraham, he had two other brothers. Haran was the father of Lot. I asked myself, why did not God tell Lot about the situation down by the Jordan Valley, and where Sodom and Gomorrah, these people were wicked and evil? Why? And I think about it, Lot had choices. Lot had a will. So whatever he looked at was fine and dandy. But it was never said, did Lot question God, saying, hey, is it all right to go down there? It didn't say here, but he just looked up and he saw this beautiful, beautiful scenery. And he goes, that's the place I want to be. Whereas Abraham, it didn't say that he was looking around. He gave Lot the choice, what you want. But then after Lot left, God came and talked to Abraham. Now that's a switch, because that tells me that if we're faithful to God, if we're doing his will, if we're obedient to his word and his commandments, what would that do in the relationship between you and the Lord? Would the Lord come alongside of you and talk to you? I do believe that could be. I do believe strongly that he does. What about Lot? Why didn't he get the fair land? I don't know. But I do know that God zeroed in on Abraham. New beginnings. The newness. God had great plans for all of us. Because God said that through Abraham, through his generation, through his descendant, all people of the world would be blessed because of him. And if we look at Abraham's history and we see what kind of man he was, would you not say you want to be part of Abraham's descendant? Because he loved God. And because he had a right relationship with God. And God was there for him, showing him, telling him the good things that God has for each and every one of us. God has for Abraham's life. Okay. I want to say a lot more because there was so much in here that I just gleaned from. But all I can say is that in chapter 14, we get to know a little bit more about the Lord, about God and about Abraham. And everything that Abraham tried to do, it would seem to be always right. And the Lord commended him in so many ways and so many times. Okay, so what the Lord said in chapter 13, he said to Abraham, after he was separated from Lot, he said, lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed always be numbered. All right. That's what God was promising Abraham back in chapter 11, that all the earth would be blessed because of Abraham. And that's what he was showing Abraham then. You know, Abraham had everything. He had riches. He had the beautiful woman. He found out, we're going to find out in chapter 14, he has power. And then we're going to find out in a little bit all these things he had. But the one thing he wanted the most, the one thing that he desired the most was an heir. Okay? But let's go. Okay, I'm saying, let's go back. Abraham was not a young guy. Abraham was 75 when he came to Canaan. If we go into chapter 14, we find out that now Abraham has power. Because there was 4 kings that were up in a house, and they were wanted to fight. And there was 5 kings in this kingdom that they wanted to fight. So these 4 kings, they beat the 5 kings. And the 2 kings that were part of the 5 kings was the king from Gomorrah and the king from Sodom. And Lot was in that kingdom where King Sodom was. Well, they were beaten. They were defeated. The 4 kings came and destroyed them, took everything, and even took Lot captive of Lot's possession and his family. Okay? Well, Abraham found out about it, and talk about Abraham caring for people. He cared most of his relative. And Lot, his nephew, was in dire trouble. So that's what he did. He got ready for war. He had 318 servants that were well trained for fighting, and they went after these 4 kings. Now I can't imagine if they had an army, they must have had a big army to destroy 5 kings with their armies. With Abram was only 318 trained servants, they went after him. And he conquered them. He destroyed them. Wow. What a mighty God we serve. So now we know that Abraham has power, he has riches, and he has a good-looking spouse. Those are all these things that we all supposedly desire. But apparently Abram had a humble heart. He didn't have to look at these things and look at what I got. What he did say, look at what I have. And that's God on his side. And when he was done conquering these 4 kings, one king came out, and his name was King, not Malachek, Melchizedek, and he was from the king of Salem. He came out, and he was going to honor Abraham with food, with bread and wine, and he wanted to bless Abraham. And he came out, and this is what King Melchizedek said to Abram. Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be the Most High God, which has delivered thy enemies into thy hand. Wow, that's honor right there. That's a humble honor. And that's what King Melchizedek, and he was also a priest of the Most High, came out and blessed Abram for a good job done, and knowing that 318 servants going against 4 huge major kings, that's amazing. That's a victory in itself. So we're going to end up here on chapter 15. And after that was done, the Lord came to Abram into a vision and says, Fear not, Abram, I am the shield and thy exceeding great reward. Chapter 15, verses 1. And that's when Abram shared with God what was really on his heart. He wanted a family. He wanted an heir. And you know what? God answered his prayer. And he says here, he said to Abram, yes, out of you will come forth an heir. And so the Lord brought Abram outside his tent. And it must have been nightfall, because it says here, he told Abram, look up to the heavens, and looking at the stars, he was saying to Abram, if thou be able to number them, he said unto him, so shall thy seed be. In verse 6, this is my really good favorite one. He said, Abraham believed in the Lord, and the Lord counted it to him for righteousness. Abraham was the right man for all of us, and God knew it, and God placed him in the right time, the right moment for these things to happen. It wasn't over time, it wasn't overnight. It took years, but in the end, God succeeded what was already planned in Abraham's life. Abraham is our father for the humankind, Father Abraham, because he obeyed God, because he trusted God, he believed in God, and God blessed him because of that. And we are his descendants. We came from Abraham because we trusted God, we asked God to help us, we called on the name of the Lord, and we have Jesus in our hearts, and now we are children of the Father, just as Abraham is a child of God. You know, there's this last part here. There was this song that when I was in children's church, everybody knows this song. But it's kind of fun while we can teach our children the things of the Bible. And it's a song that had Abraham in it, and this is a song. He said, Father Abraham had many sons, Many sons had many sons that Father Abraham has. I'm one of them, and so are you. So let's all praise the Lord. So we had a series of things that the kids can do as we can praise God. And that's how we look at Father Abraham, because he is our example. He is our example of being a father who takes care of his family. He's an example as one who feared God and be part of his family, is having God in our family. And most of all, he obeyed God in every turn in his life. And he succeeded. And in the end, the glory and honor belongs to the Lord. Isn't it wonderful that God can work in us? Isn't it wonderful that God can tell us the things that we need to know? The plans in our life, the plans of his plans in our lives? It's like what Pastor Eunice was saying. You don't have to work hard for it. If we trust God and we wait upon him and allow the things just to land on the right shape and mold, it becomes an easy thing, because that's why we trust God. God is really lifting us up in his power and his might. And when we see that, it doesn't become difficult. It actually becomes easy. And we're doing good for the Lord, but we're also doing good for others. And I think that's why we need to be together. We need to be together for all of us, for all of us as part of God's family. I know there's so much going on nowadays. There's so much anger. There's so much bitterness. There's so much fighting, unnecessary fighting. There's so much misunderstanding. I mean, that wasn't what God's plan for our lives to be. But he does touch people's hearts that want to be touched. God loves us, and he wants the best for us. But we need to go to him and ask for his help, ask for his guidance and his directions. He doesn't want anyone to perish. Okay. All right. Closing prayer. Father God, we just thank you